We live in a culture today that is obsessed with love. There's TV shows about finding love. We see Love Island, The Bachelor. I know y'all binge watch all those. February is Valentine's Day, which this last year, we spent over $26 billion in just one day on flowers, cards, chocolates, all the stuff, all in the name of love. It's the L word to some people. You're afraid to say it. Some of you are afraid to show it. Some of you are afraid to even feel it. But the question is, what is love? I know some of y'all expected me to sing the song. I'm not Seth. I'm not going to sing today. Don't worry about that. You ain't got to worry about that. But seriously, the world has pitched us what love is, and it's through Hollywood, through the movies we watch, through the music we listen to, through social media. We get this definition, but the definition of the word has now been diluted. The definition of love has been diluted to describe objects. Oh, hey, I love your shoes. Hey, I love that TV show. I love that artist. I love listening to them. And we throw this word around, but we don't actually say it when it counts. Now, it is love, but when love is defined by the world, it takes us away from God's standard of love that you and I were created to experience. Now, I want to pause for a moment. Like, some of y'all have already tuned out because I said love way too much already. Y'all don't want to think about it. You think this is about to be some lovey-dovey type sermon, but please hear me when I say this. We need this message this morning. John was not just like a sissy, okay? We've been in this series on 1 John, and he's writing this book later on in his life. He's known as one of the sons of thunder. I bet you he probably spent weekends at Home Depot doing all the things, but he was not lacking in masculinity. Like, this man was not lacking, and he talks about love more than any other book in the Bible. He talks about love more than any other book in the Bible because John knows something that we need to know when it comes to love. If we do not know God's love for us, we will never be able to love ourselves or others the way that God intended. He says in chapter 4, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. God is love. He is love. But I also need you to hear me when I say this. Love is not God. Love is not God. Our culture has said, go for love, pursue love above everything else, and it has made it a God. It has made it a false idol in this world. Saying pursuing love is far more important than pursuing God, but please hear me. Our desire for love cannot be more than our desire to pursue God. It cannot be an idol in our life because God is love, but love is not God. And John focuses on love through a lot of his writing, but as we've been in this series of 1 John, we talked week 1 about false teaching, week 2 about false gods, and week 3 was false beliefs. But as we close the series today, the title and the direction for today's message is false love. It's false love. And I was thinking back to my first date that I ever went on. Listen, I was about as desperate for a girl as it comes by. Like, all through middle school, all through elementary school, I was just like looking for a relationship. And Seth reminded me last night that didn't stop there. It was in high school too. It was all these things, but that's neither here nor there. But I convinced this girl, LJ, to go to the movies with me. And I was so excited. She was so out of my league, but she said yes. I convinced her somehow. And I remember being so awkward about it because I didn't want to tell my parents about a relationship. This is my first time ever having a crush on a girl. Well, I had crushes, they just didn't pan out. It's my first time getting a date with a girl, let's say that. And I was just like, I don't want to have this ooey gooey conversation with them. I don't want to talk about relationships, any of that. But the thing is, I had to tell them. I was in 7th grade. I couldn't drive to the date. Like, I needed a ride. So had to tell Mom. And she's like, oh, I'm so happy. My son is growing up. And I was like, listen, Mom, for me, this is just business. Mother, I need a ride. That's it. That's it. There's nothing more to it. I need the ride. Are you going to give it to me or not? She agreed. And of course, she dropped me off at the movies. I meet up with my date. And listen, I think this is the best movie that you could ever take a girl to. And it's Finding Dory. Like, I'm convinced it's such a good choice for a movie. It worked for me, at least. She had fun. She even held my hand no matter how clammy it was. But seventh grade Mason had the moves, and I remember my mom coming to pick me up after the date, and I'm walking out to the van, and I see my brothers hanging out the side of the window, and all they're saying is, "Ooh, Mason, are you in love? Ooh, Mason, do you love her?" And I'm like, "Oh, bro, chill, she's right over there." But the thing is, I thought I was in love. She didn't think that, though. She broke up with me the next week. So it's real quick, real short. Listen, don't give me a lot of crap on that. I was a kid. I was young. But if we can be real today, many people are chasing a false love. And it's because they have not fully understood or been loved according to the standard of love that God gives. And this false love has caused so many people to fear love. Some of you have been so hurt by others because they have used love to justify their actions. Some of you have already tuned out because you don't want to get hurt again from love. But I need you to hear me. Please hear me when I read to you what the Lord says. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. And I know that this false love has caused you pain. I know it's caused you heartache. I know there is abuse tied to this word. But God's love is not the love of this world. It is so much more than that. And John uses a word, agape, to talk about the love of God throughout the scriptures. And this agape love is a love that is selfless, it is sacrificial, and it is unconditional. And this agape love of God throughout the Bible is our standard of love. The world is going to try and sell you a counterfeit. It's going to try and sell you a fake. It's going to try to sell you this false love. But the end is only going to leave you more empty and more hurt than before. But the love of God does not have to be bought. The world is selling you something, but the love of God does not have to be bought. And it's here for you this morning. So today, we're going to look at this false love that you've been sold. And we're going to compare it to the standard of biblical love that we are given and we are to give. So write this down. False love is selfish. False love is selfish. And selfishness is rooted in sin. See, the sin of this world causes us to experience a love that is prideful, that is full of insecurity. And the selfish love is one that says, hey, you know what? I want that now. I need that now. Or it's saying, hey, you better give this to me. It's a love that says, oh, I'm jealous of anything that you do. I'm envious. It's a worldly jealousy. It's full of arrogance. It keeps track of everything you've ever done wrong in your life. It is lying to get something, and it is one of the most fragile loves that you will experience, because the moment that something goes wrong, the moment it gets shaky, it's gone with the wind. And this is the kind of love that has hurt and caused us to hurt other people. But this is false love. It is selfish. But God's love is selfless. God's love is selfless. And Paul writes to us in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the famous love chapter, where he says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, and it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. God's love is selfless. It's selfless. Well, what's so selfless about it? It's the fact that from the beginning, God gave you and I a choice to follow him. He did not require it. Jesus tells us in John 15, you did not choose me, but I chose you. And then again in 1 John, we love because he first loved us. God chose to love us first before we even had a decision to make if we would love him or not. God's love is selfless. So in the same way, our love must be selfless too. Our standard of love must be selfless. But false love is also conditional. It's conditional. It's saying, hey, if you love me, then you'll do this for me. Or it's saying, hey, if you give me this, then I'm going to love you. Maybe you've used the word to get something. Hey, we love each other. That means we should do this. Have you ever heard it said that, oh, hey, you owe me My love isn't cheap. This is conditional love. It's false love. We're abusing the word to get what we want. And we dilute the meaning by attaching conditions onto the back of it. And the moment we attach conditions on the back of our love is when we hurt people. That's where we hurt people. But God's love is unconditional. His love for you and me doesn't come with a, hey, you got to clean yourself before you get here. Or, hey, like, if you do this, then I'm God. I'll love you after you do that. Like, no, he loves us regardless. Verse 19, we love because he first loved us. He loved you and me before we could screw any of this up. It is not contingent. It is not conditional on anything. He loved us first. In Romans, it says, God demonstrates his own love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Even when it looks like we don't deserve it, he loves us. And I'll be honest with you, like I haven't always deserved love, especially in my own life and with my family. You know, growing up, I've always been a mama's boy. I love my mother. I would do anything for her. But that wasn't always the case. Like, I don't think we were always on the same side. I actually called her yesterday, and she said, and I quote, she said, "You were the more emotional one on things." And I was like, okay, Mom, thank you for that. But I'm serious. I got into a lot of crying fits. I was like hyper emotional growing up. But I remember this moment when I was about 7. My dad had left to go on a work fishing trip. And for whatever reason, he had the audacity to leave me behind. Like, what? You don't want to take your son with you on a trip where you can get away for several days? Like, what do you mean? He loves me. Why would he not want to take me on that? But I remember when I found out I wasn't going, it just sent me over the edge. I ran into my room. I started pulling things off the walls. I was pulling clothes out of drawers, flipping things over. I mean, I had like Hulk strength at 7. I don't know what it was, but my mom, bless her, I don't know what she was going to do with me. But I remember I was demanding him to come back home, demanding him to come get me, because I remember thinking this thought: you guys don't love me. You don't love me because you won't let me go. You don't love me because you won't let me do this thing. And in my eyes as a kid, love was conditional on what they would give me. Love was conditional on what they would do for me. But the thing is, I know my parents love me. I know it's not a doubt that they have a love for me. But the lack of meeting my conditions, meeting my needs, did not mean that there was a lack of love. The lack of them giving me what I thought was best for me did not mean that there was a lack of love. And in the same way that God's love is unconditional, our standard of love cannot have conditions. We can't have conditions on who we love and when we love them. Oh, but Mason, you don't understand. Like, you're telling me I gotta love everybody? Yes. But like the person at the office who's got that like really punchable face? Yes. I got some of those. I'm just kidding. The family member who wronged me last Thanksgiving, I wouldn't even invite back this year. Yes. Well, you're telling me the girl who broke my heart, I'm supposed to forgive them and love them? Yes. Wait, you're telling me that the person who voted differently than I did? Hey-o. Yes, you have to love that person unconditionally. But you're like, oh, Mason, you don't understand how hard this is. I do. I have people in my life who I struggle to love. People who have punchable faces, I struggle to love. But I have people in my life that make it hard. In my several years of doing ministry now, I've come across people who I care about deeply who don't follow Jesus. And they see the job that I have, the things that I do, as pointless. They ask me when I'm going to grow up and get a real job. They're going to ask me, when are you going to finally make something of yourself? To the calling that I've devoted my life to, the church that I've poured out to, the thing that gives me so much purpose and so much joy, it's just not serious to them. And that hurts. That makes it so hard to love those people. But I love them anyways. I care about them. My love for them can't have a condition that they must meet in order for me to give out love, because God's love doesn't have a condition for me. And this is hard. This is so hard, but we have to understand that in our own flesh, we are incapable of loving someone the way that God tells us to love them. that is where we need God to come in the mix. John says it this way, "Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God. And so we know and we rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them." It's His Spirit that lives inside of us, that He gives us, that helps us love people unconditionally. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect at this, because we're not going to do this perfectly, but it's keeping our heart's posture in loving people unconditionally, because God's love is unconditional. But false love is greedy. It's greedy. Greed says, how much can I keep for myself? Greedy love is a desire to be loved by others without a willingness to give anything back in return. It demands more than it will ever give, and what you give or receive in this love will never be enough to truly satisfy you. It's greedy. Because greed is the opposite of generosity. And generosity, just to give you a definition, is the action of freely and frequently giving to others. And I love that as a church, as a part of this church, we get to see that through a lot of you who give generously. We have people in our church the last few years who have given up cars. They've sold land and houses to help families in need. They don't even know those families. We have life groups that serve on a monthly, consistent basis those less fortunate in the community. We have people, about 80 people who get here early and stay late every Sunday to make sure that your family is taken care of and has a great Sunday experience. They're generous. Because if you want to know what it looks like to shock somebody, be generous. If you want to know what it looks like to reach your family, you're going into Thanksgiving, the holidays, be generous. If you want to know what it looks like to be more like Jesus, be generous. And you don't think about it and just do nothing. You have to actually do it. You have to actually give it. And if you want to know what it is, that thing that you're supposed to give, it's the thing that you're thinking in your mind right now. You're like, I'm never giving that. I'm not giving my time. I'm not giving my money to that. But you will never go to bed regretting that you were generous. But I know people lie awake at night thinking about what more they can get. You will never go to bed regretting that you were generous. But generosity is the opposite of this greedy, false love that we see in this world. And the ultimate act of generosity is sacrifice. It's sacrifice. God's love is sacrificial. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son to the world that we may live through Him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. The ultimate act of generosity was Jesus' sacrifice for us on the cross. And it echoes the words that Jesus said in John's own gospel account, where He says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." This is the greatest love, sacrifice. It's exactly what Jesus did. He laid down His life. He sacrificed. God's love is sacrificial, so our standard of love must include sacrifice. Amy Carmichael was a missionary in the early 20th century. And she helped open an orphanage in India. She is credited with saving over 1,000 kids. So I think she knows a little something about sacrifice. And she said this quote, and it has stuck with me all week. She said, "One can give without loving, but one cannot love without giving." One can give without loving, but one cannot love without giving. What are you willing to sacrifice out of love? What we love and how we love is based on how we were loved. It is either believing this false love that I've just talked about, the one that the world defines, or it's understanding the biblical definition of God's love for you. It is from this love, from the depth of this love, that then we can go and fulfill the greatest commandment that Jesus gives. He says, my command is this: love each other as I have loved you. This isn't a suggestion. This isn't a, hey, when you guys get some time, do you think maybe you could love other people? This is a command from Jesus. We are to love others to the way that he has loved us. Paul even mentions it back in 1 Corinthians. He's just got done explaining to the church of Corinth spiritual gifts and how they're used for building up the church. And he says this: now eagerly desire the greater gifts, and yet I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Paul's basically saying if church doesn't have love, it's just annoying. Okay, it's just loud. It doesn't have, there's no purpose, there's no direction behind it. Without love, it does not make a difference. But he goes on to say this: if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor, and I give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing. If anything we do is not out of love, it is worthless. It's nothing. There's nothing to it. And we have been commanded to love. We are the church that has been commanded by Jesus to love. So I want you to ask yourself this question, really like dig deep in your heart when you ask this. Am I capable, am I willing to love others? Am I capable and willing to love others? Again, in verse 19, we love because he first loved us. He loved you first. He loved you selflessly. He loved you unconditionally. And he loved you sacrificially. That is his love. And I want you to get this word. I want this to just sink in. Romans says, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels or demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing can separate you from his love. Nothing. God's love for you is not dependent on you loving him, but you either can accept that love or reject it. You can accept it or you can reject it. And if you don't know the depth of love that God has for you, you cannot fully walk in and walk out his love. And guys, I've struggled with that. I've struggled to think that God could ever love me past my mistakes, past the people who I wanted to love me, but they didn't reach. Then why would God? The time my love got abused, through my addictions, through me trying to put a smile up when really I'm dying on the inside and I felt so alone, God's love met me and it stayed with me. His love said, there's no condition, Mason. There's nothing you need to come to me. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And I gave everything so that you would know how much that I love you. That's God's love. But some of you don't fully understand this love that he has for you. And that is what's holding you back from all that God wants for you. All that he wants to do through you. But I don't want you leaving here today believing the lies that you're not loved. I don't want you to leave here believing that you don't deserve love, that you're not capable of loving other people because God loved you first. He loved you first, and he gave us the best example of how to love people. Through the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, it is our standard for love. It is selfless, it is unconditional, and it is sacrificial. God's love is our standard. Across the room, if y'all would bow your heads.